Since ancient times, people have sought intelligent brothers in the universe. In Neolithic cave paintings, one often encounters the same motif, beings with enormous heads emerging from a spherical object. These fantasies of primitive artists created whimsical narratives, raising the question, could they have seen humanoids? Perhaps these images are the creations of hands, tentacles, or manipulators of some other intelligence. Questions about the Tunguska meteorite, the attack of a cosmic stone, or the crash of an alien ship remain relevant. In January 2007, something strange occurred in a Siberian forest. Living beings, according to eyewitnesses, felt the approach of some cosmic wanderer to Earth. Who is watching us from the sky? Do extraterrestrial civilizations wish to engage in dialogue? There are revelations from contactees who claim that you are already being taken on a flight and you are departing. However, the return may not be guaranteed. In this context, the mysteries of the Samara Bend arise. Who lives in the Volga Reservoir? Why do fire gods and flying saucers follow the same route? Among the accounts of eyewitnesses, it is hard to find a group where at least one person has not seen this being with their own eyes. There are even safety tips for encounters with UFOs. In the Zhiguli Mountains, as locals claim, wishes come true, and the ancient ritual still works today. It is interesting to see what meteorite iron looks like. Once, a newspaper article came into the hands of Vyacheslav Klimov, a member of the Kosmopoisk group from Moscow. On the 10th of January 2007, around 10 o'clock in the evening, residents of the Altai territory observed a bright flash in the sky. A glowing spherical body moved along a parabolic trajectory from Barnaul to Rubtsovsk. It seems that UFOs have appeared in the sky over Siberia once again. Within 6 months, several research expeditions were organized to the site of the mysterious fireball's fall. Vyacheslav was planning to speak with a participant from the last expedition. Residents of eastern Siberia often observe unexplained phenomena in the sky, and various glowing objects are encountered throughout these regions. This time, the celestial body behaved strangely. Could the story of the Tunguska meteorite be repeating itself? On the 30th of June, 1908, a glowing object with a long, fiery tail appeared in the sky over Siberia. At 7:17 local time, an explosion was heard in the basin of the Podkamenaya Tunguska River. Witnesses, located 300 kilometers from the site of the meteorite fall, were struck by the unbelievable silence that lasted for 8 hours after the explosion. Over 100 years, numerous expeditions have failed to find any remnants of cosmic material in the area of the Tunguska meteorite fall, which allows for the hypothesis of a crash of an alien spacecraft in the Siberian taiga. As he set off for Altai, Vyacheslav was confident that he would have to search for the site of the UFO crash. On the 4th of May, the group arrived in the village of Kayushka in the Altai territory. Local residents who witnessed the strange phenomenon reported that a day before the appearance of the unidentified object, people felt an unmotivated anxiety. Domestic animals also behaved strangely. In the area of the fall where it flew, dogs were restless. Vyacheslav Klimov shares his observations. Living beings sense the approach of some cosmic wanderer to Earth. Around 10 o'clock in the evening, the sky was illuminated by a bright flash of light and people went outside. A glowing sphere was rapidly approaching the ground. Approximately at 22:18, a deafening bang was heard. The loud noise and bright flash were comparable to the flash of a short circuit in a high-voltage power line. After the explosion, the sphere changed its trajectory and began to descend, leaving behind a black tail of smoke. Could it be that the UFO crashed? However, researchers began to doubt and proposed an unexpected version. The Earth was once again subjected to an attack by a large meteorite. When people described the flight of the glowing sphere, they noted that it could have been a meteorite, considering its straight trajectory and the sound of impact. To verify the theory of the falling fireball, researchers began to determine its location. For a week, stalkers explored the taiga, and finally, on the 10th of May, reached the village of Razdolnoy. Fragments of meteorite iron were discovered within a radius of 10 kilometers from it. At the site of the fall of these fragments, traces of impact left by them were found. The meteorite shards were scattered over a large area, and the body, weighing about 450 kilograms, was composed mainly of stone iron and tektite materials. This site is considered the location of the Tunguska meteorite fall. Approximately 500 kilometers from here, the Vitum bolide was observed. Interestingly, this area attracts the attention of researchers of anomalous phenomena. Fireballs and bolides are not rare in the Altai territory. Local residents observe them annually. Sometimes, fragments of meteorite iron are mistaken for ordinary stones. There have been cases when large stones were found in the fields and used to weigh down cabbage, only to later discover that they were meteorites. How can one distinguish an ordinary stone from a cosmic traveler? It turns out that if you bring a compass close to it, the needle begins to deviate, while an ordinary magnet sticks to the fragment of the meteorite. Some places on Earth also attract UFOs and meteorites. Even artificial satellites flying over eastern Siberia deviate from their designated orbit, indicating the presence of special biological points on the planet. If we accept the hypothesis that Earth is a living organism, it can be suggested that meteorite falls do not occur randomly but in specific locations. The map marks zones where anomalous phenomena occur, and statistics show that this happens most often in mountains and areas of geological faults. The epicenter of the Tunguska explosion, the Emsky Triangle in the Perm region, the Medveditskaya Ridge in the Volgograd region, the bend of the Volga River near Samara, 47 kilometers of the Yaroslavl Highway near Moscow, the Crimean Mountains, Toman, the mountains near Sochi, the Sayan Mountains, Kapustin Yar, Altai, and the Severodvinsk Triangle. All these places are considered powerful, biologically active zones where the likelihood of observing UFOs is high. Research continues. For example, 3 years ago, Tatiana Makarova, the head of the Tolyatti Ufology Commission and a full member of the Russian Geographical Society, was returning home after her shift at the Volga automobile plant. Around midnight, while waiting for the bus, she noticed a strange object hovering in the air above a high-rise building. Tatiana recalls, "It was a completely clear and solid disc, about 15 meters in diameter. It was glowing and hanging motionless, completely silently. While she was mesmerized by the object, a car pulled up to the stop, which suddenly stalled. The driver could not understand what had happened to his vehicle. For several minutes, Tatiana observed the disc, and then it disappeared, and at that same moment, the car started on its own." The woman described all the details of the unidentified flying object, which, according to her, looked like a spacecraft. Ufologists refer to such UFOs as technogenic, suggesting that they are creations of some other intelligence. This fact leads to the thought that these objects possess characteristics that even sufficiently advanced technology has not yet achieved. In the area of the Volga automobile plant, flying saucers are frequently observed, and sometimes several people become witnesses at once. The mass hallucinations that occur here with enviable regularity have provided researchers with a unique opportunity to calculate the flight trajectory of Tolyatti's UFOs, which move from the Zhiguli Mountains over the territory of the plant. Several monoids off to the side leave a chemical complex and thus move towards the Koibush Fazot plant. The conclusion drawn by the researchers can be termed sensational. Unidentified flying objects attract large industrial enterprises in Tolyatti, specifically choosing such enormous objects. Nikolai Goryunov, a member of the Tolyatti Ufological Commission, notes that UFOs are particularly interested in power plants, especially nuclear ones. These objects have been repeatedly spotted, and bases also attract their attention. Over 15 years of observations, local ufologists have compiled a schedule of UFO flights, and it turned out that the flying saucers have several routes. The intersection point of the UFO routes is located at Samarskaya Luka, over the waters of the Volga Reservoir. Analyzing the routes of the glowing objects, Togliatti ufologists suggested that technogenic UFOs require energy. UFOs fly along specific routes almost regularly, like airplanes, and, in their opinion, serve along energy fields. Once, while fishing, Vladimir Kovalyets, the head of a project for esoteric, extreme adventure and health tourism, encountered a UFO face-to-face. He was sailing with a friend on a motorboat when a glowing sphere appeared in the sky in the middle of the Volga Reservoir. Vladimir describes, "It is clear that there are clouds, and this thing is below the clouds. It is difficult to determine the height, but about 300 meters. He continues, "Here it comes out, and it has a kind of halo. Then there was a click, and our motor died. That is, it just shut off. The wind picked up, and the boat began to drift towards the rocks. We unsuccessfully tried to start the engine while these wings spread out and hovered right above us. Power beams were sticking out from it, yes, from the glowing sphere, and we could not start the motor. It was not fun. Then, with a click, those beams went inside. Literally, right after that, the motor jerked and started, and we blasted away from them at full power." Vladimir shares his impressions. "Now you see these frames on the monitor screen. I enlarge the image. Along the hull, portholes are clearly visible, illuminated from within. But should one trust their eyes? Almost all eyewitnesses who have observed UFOs describe a strange light that literally feels the earth. Many experience panic with goosebumps running down their skin. Eyewitnesses suggest that this is not a spotlight, but rather incomprehensible, intelligent substances studying our planet." A resident of the Samara region, Nikolai Goryunov, remembers the unusual glow of a UFO from his childhood. In his native village of Volshisko-Pecherskoye, boys would watch the stars, and suddenly one of them shouted, "Look! Look!" From the northern side of the sky, a huge white sphere suddenly appeared, about the diameter of the moon, from which a massive white beam emanated. This light did not resemble an ordinary spotlight. The beam traced across the horizon and then retracted into the sphere. Speaking about the nature of UFOs, researchers note that they can manifest in very strange ways, may project or hover in the air. Perhaps the light tentacles of UFOs are exploring our planet, and such phenomena can be called preliminary contact with extraterrestrial intelligence. However, throughout the entire history of UFO studies, there has not been a single contact that occurred at the initiative of a human. The conditions of the game are always dictated by the aliens, which raises concerns. Recently, a woman approached the ufologists in Togliatti, telling them that her 6-year-old son had been aboard a flying saucer. The boy was in his room, and after a while, the parents felt anxious and rushed into the room, but the child was not there. Frightened, the parents searched the entire apartment, but the boy was nowhere to be found. The windows and doors were closed when a voice from the hallway called out. He recounted that he had found himself in a room when suddenly a beam of light penetrated it. This beam lifted him, and when they began to carry him out of the room, he became soft, like water, and flew through the sky. The child was taken aboard, given a ride, and returned back to his room. The boy felt fine and was not even scared. The next day, his mother took him to the doctor. The examination showed that there were no negative changes in the child's body. But the question of why the aliens abducted the boy remains unanswered. In Togliatti, cases of abduction of people occur quite frequently. In the understanding of some researchers, contact is the interaction between representatives of two intelligent systems. human and not quite human. The main sign of such contact is the exchange of information rather than one-sided data acquisition. To become a contactee, special abilities are not required. The mysterious intelligence can choose the most ordinary people. One nurse from Togliatti only realized at the age of 40 that she had been under observation her entire life. At around the age of 40, she began to have visions and communications, and she received a diverse array of information about the structure of the universe and the history of civilizations. The woman was frightened, thinking she had gone insane, but examination showed that her psyche was in perfect order. One day, while doing household chores, she heard a medical term from her daughter, and at that moment, a flash of memory occurred. She remembered how, in childhood, when she was 3 years old, she ended up aboard a flying saucer. This UFO had a disc-shaped form and a metallic copper color. Since the time of the abduction, she began to perceive herself as an adult, and even as an old person. A year later, this adventure faded from her memory, and only at the age of 40 did the contact resume. The woman began to see objects that an ordinary person could not discern. A check of her vision range showed that it had expanded towards ultraviolet by 30%, allowing her to see like a bee. The incident in the village of Sosnovi Solonits also entered the history of ufology. The villagers observed a red fireball and even communicated with it. On a warm summer evening, several villagers were gathered near the store when a huge red fireball, about 1.5 meters in diameter, appeared nearby. People ran away in fear, while the shop assistant, with trembling hands from terror, tried to lock the store's door. She dropped the key and could not find it in the dark. At that moment, a thin beam of light extended from the ball, pointing to the place where the key lay. This was essentially a hint. The woman picked up the key, locked the door, and only then went home. It seemed that the UFO acted intelligently. Who controlled the red ball? Intelligent energy, nature spirits, or aliens? In these places, there is a belief that red balls are the fearsome goddess Kremet. Perhaps the locals explained the anomalous phenomena in their own way. Kremet is a being, a deity that flies and glows, and not everyone is destined to see it. Yuri Reshevsky, a researcher at the Institute of Ecology of the Volga Basin of the Russian Academy of Sciences, noted that this being is quite severe by nature. The locals worshipped Kremet at sacred trees, leaving offerings, candies, cookies, fruits. Otherwise, it was believed that Kremet could touch a person and inflict illness. In the village of Makshanskoye Bakilovo, there are still people who have suffered in one way or another from the mysterious deity. Paralysis often occur here, sometimes affecting only the arms. The Chuvash people living in Krasnaya Luka refer to the red fireballs as ifsi, while the Russian population calls them liatuni. Both peoples believe that these spheres have a devilish origin. One hunter recounted how his hand was damaged upon contact with an ifum, that is, with a liatun. An encounter with a liatun was considered a bad omen, and the sparks flying from the fireball left severe burns on the skin. The question of whether a UFO can cause such serious harm to health remains open. How should one behave when encountering an unidentified object? Many people in these areas have stories to tell. A resident of Togliatti who observed a UFO for only a few minutes nearly lost the skin on her hands. When the woman was taken to the hospital, the doctors merely shrugged and were afraid to make predictions. She remembers seeing a UFO from the window, which resembled a firework. A white disc sparkled, scattering sparks around it. In a state of shock and euphoria, she reached out her hands to it, exclaiming, "Take me!" 2 days later, the skin on her hands began to peel off in layers. After this incident, Togliatti ufologists developed safety techniques for UFO observations. First and foremost, one should not attract attention. Do not signal with a flashlight or wave your hands. it is better to find a safe shelter and carefully observe the object's behavior. Anomalous objects are quite energetically active, ranging from increased radiation to heightened ultraviolet radiation. This can lead to conjunctivitis or radiation sickness, so one should not look at an unidentified object for too long and too intently. Observations are better conducted with short glances, periodically turning away, or using protective glasses. If you discover a landing site, it is best not to enter without protective suits. The interior of a UFO has the peculiarity of leaving radiation emissions at the location where they have been. Therefore, the same safety measures should be observed. Enter this spot only for a short time with clear objectives, for example, to collect a soil or grass sample, and quickly leave the area. Local residents have left numerous legends about flying gods, glowing spheres, and strange people inhabiting the Samara Luka. By exploring these legends, one can compare them with eyewitness accounts. In the Middle Ages, the Zhiguli Mountains were called Devya. Legends say that powerful sorceress Amazons lived in the mountains, who in Greek mythology were warrior women living separately from men. According to legends, the Amazons lived on the farthest shores of the Black Sea, and their capital was the city of Themyscira. From childhood, the Amazons were taught to wield a spear, a sword, to throw darts, and to be skilled horsewomen. The existence of the Amazons was confirmed by archaeological discoveries. In 1972, near the city of Orджоникидзе, a burial site of a chieftain's family was found, where weapons were located next to a woman, and a child lay on the arm of a man. To this day, witnesses encounter ghostly figures in the forests, and after that, Enlil appears in the sky. Last spring, students from the Volga University set off on an expedition to the Samara Luka. Having reached the place called Kamenaya Chasha, they set up a tent camp. At that time, I was in the area of Yelgusha, where in the middle of the forest there was a large, fairly flat clearing. Sitting by the fire, a woman noticed a procession approaching her. Looking closely, she realized that these were not people, but something clearly on four legs. For a few seconds, she was distracted to toss some firewood into the flames. When she looked back toward the forest, the mysterious figures had vanished. Perhaps it was an illusion caused by excitement, but when at 11:40 she saw an object in the sky that was neither a star nor an airplane nor a scooter, she was no longer surprised. The object silently ascended and soon disappeared from sight. The next morning, upon returning to the tent camp, she learned that others had also seen a UFO, and their descriptions matched her observations. This convinced her that she had not gone insane. She could not explain what exactly it was. In this area, glowing spheres were referred to as red dragons. In ancient times, they were deified and appeased with sacrifices. In this place, it is hard to find a company where there would not be at least one person who had seen this flying creature with their own eyes. Interest in unidentified flying objects arose for Roman Kalganov in childhood when he saw a red sphere near the hydroelectric power station. In one of his recollections, he shares, "I once saw when we were driving to Fyodorovka, here is the settlement of Rai. It was just an ordinary red sphere that was standing still." This sight left a great impression on the boy. After enrolling in the institute, Roman began to seriously study anomalous phenomena. He believes that legends and local beliefs are the key to understanding modern events. It is nothing more than a verbal transmission of information that came out of a series of events and observations, he explains. Many legends describe a technological race or a sorcerer who possessed vimanas, flying boats, and even atomic furnaces. Based on eyewitness accounts and ancient legends, Roman, along with his friends from the Institute, created a map of the anomalous zones of Samarskaya Luka. "We need to connect electromagnetic fields and interactions in anomalous zones," he says. "All the events witnessed by eyewitnesses must be linked to strong electromagnetic radiation. Roman holds a map on which red markers indicate electromagnetic anomalies, blue markers denote UFO sighting locations, and yellow flags mark objects mentioned in local mythology. As I see it, they almost coincide, he notes. In June of last year, a group of bioenergetics from Togliatti went to the Zhiguli Mountains to study the region's energy. They stopped on the banks of the Volga, near a burial mound. Antonina Gribanova, a bioenergeticist, recalls, "An inner voice suggested to us that we should stand up and approach this place." When they reached the water, all five noticed how a screen formed on the smooth surface of the river. "We really saw the mistress of the Volga. It is not for nothing that she is called Mother Volga," Antonina recounts. Then the images on the screen changed, and they were shown a city that, according to their reasoning, was underwater. Towers, green trees, and a church with a wooden dome, she describes. The introduction lasted a very long time. Later they received information about this city which stated that there indeed exist entities of the inhabitants who come to the surface when called. "All of them are the residents of an ancient city that sank underground as a result of a catastrophe," Antonina adds. "It was a civilization that once lived on this land and created a network of interdimensional passages that allowed them to move through time and to other worlds. And those passages that these people once prepared for themselves can open up anywhere," she concludes. Is there a grain of truth in this hypothesis? During the construction of the Volga hydroelectric power station, the territory of the ancient city of Stavropol on the Volga was indeed flooded. In its place, a new city emerged, Togliatti. The construction of the hydroelectric station became a serious intervention in nature. Elena Rojdestvenskaya, the director of the Tourist Information Center of Togliatti, notes that as a result of this intervention, anomalous phenomena began to occur. There is a theory that UFOs appear at the junction of parallel worlds. This raises questions about what civilization might exist alongside us, and why people cannot travel to other worlds. In this context, mysterious stone generators are discussed, which are rumored to be connected to UFOs. There is also the question of why fiery columns appear over certain mountains, and how one might benefit from the sights of flying saucers. If parallel worlds exist, then there must be places of transition somewhere. After talking with Valentina Vasilyevna, a resident of Togliatti, I got the impression that the glowing columns emerging from the ground represent tunnels to another reality. Valentina, who has spent her entire life in Togliatti, loves to come to the Samara Bend. One day, early in the morning, while on the banks of the Volga, she noticed a bright glowing point rapidly approaching the ground. Soon this point transformed into a large doubly convex stupa. From the waters of the Volga, a beam of light rose to meet this object. The object entered the beam, descended into the water, turned horizontally, and disappeared. In the Samara Bend, light columns are often observed, which are colloquially referred to as cat's ears. These glowing formations, which have a conical shape and a height of about 1.5 to 2 meters, appear on flat ground as if out of nowhere. Forest rangers of the Zhiguli Nature Reserve tell stories about these phenomena. They explain that water flows around huge masses of Earth, creating an electromagnetic loop that causes distortions in the electromagnetic field. It can be assumed that places with such geology attract UFOs. Generators, like any other source of energy, produce electricity, and in this context, abnormal phenomena are observed in the Samara Bend. Mount Svetelka, located in the center of the Zhiguli Mountains, is considered sacred. Geologists assert that a powerful fault in the Earth's crust runs beneath it, creating maximum beneficial radiation for the human body. At the top of the mountain, the ruins of an ancient settlement remain, where, according to local beliefs, sorcerers and magicians lived. According to some sources, it was there that people who came from Mount Kailash in the 7th century resided, representing a highly developed civilization. Kailash, a sacred mountain in Tibet, is considered the center of the world and the abode of the gods. 4 great rivers originate from its slopes: the Ganges, the Indus, the Sutlej, and the Brahmaputra. According to Indian mythology, the peak of Kailash reaches into the heavens, and its slopes are covered with gold, rubies, and lapis lazuli. 4 edges of the mountain correspond to the main cardinal directions, and the cracks on the southern side resemble a swastika, a Buddhist symbol of spiritual power. Today, Mount Svatelka continues to attract people seeking power and success. Businessman Andrei Bunyakov visits Svatelka several times a year. After his first visit, amazing changes occurred in his life. He recalls, "I personally felt nothing here at first, it seemed. But returning home, some miracles began to happen to me. It was as if a tightly coiled spring started to unwind. Knowledge came to me." Andrei felt a powerful energy filling him, guiding him through life. Suddenly, he noticed that he was able to read thoughts. It was something telepathic, difficult to describe, but while communicating with people, he began to see through them as if they were transparent. A question arose. Why did Andrei's telepathic abilities awaken? Perhaps he entered into a dialogue with an extraterrestrial intelligence. He himself believes that these thoughts come to us from above, from an unknown source. Over the course of a year, his business significantly expanded. The company got rid of competitors, and Andrei rid himself of enemies. He recalls, "In business, I had a specific enemy whom I hated deeply, considering him the cause of many of my troubles. And when I returned, I simply plastered him out of my life, and he disappeared." Andrei does not know the secret of Svatelka, but he feels that the mountain possesses powerful energy that influences the subconscious and reveals a person's inner potential. There are speculations that UFOs are drawn to such faults, where ancient temples were often built, allowing people to more easily enter trance states. Perhaps that is why there is a belief that a wish made at Svatelka will surely come true. Svatelka gathers numerous lightning strikes. This is energy capable of fulfilling wishes. To do this, one must take a small stone and place it in the pyramid of spirits. The stone, chosen at the foot of Svatelka, must be of the correct shape. Upon reaching the summit, one needs to concentrate and make a wish. At the moment when everything aligns, the palm turns, the stone falls, and it begins to be influenced by forces similar to those used in shamanic practices. If the stone lands in the pyramid, the wish will soon be fulfilled. If it rolls away far, it means the wish will not come true. Alla and Liusia, students, share their impressions. Liusia recounts that after visiting Svatelka, inexplicable things began to happen in her life. Climbing to the top of the mountain, she made a bold wish: "Let everything I want come true." Her stone landed directly in the pyramid. She notes, "If I start pressing on my temples, it is believed that if you have abilities, they become stronger. After that, my wishes came true to such an extent that I was in shock." Strange events began to happen to her in the city. One day, while preparing to return a small amount of money to a friend, she received change in a minibus and, approaching her friend, opened her hand, discovering that the amount was in her hands. There are no objective explanations for this phenomenon. Could it be that the money materialized? Perhaps Liusia made contact with an extraterrestrial intelligence. Be that as it may, the fact remains. Having visited the largest flying saucer testing ground, the girl developed paranormal abilities. What is a UFO? Alien ships? Another form of existence or inhabitants of parallel worlds? No one knows. The most intriguing mystery of the 21st century remains unsolved. In Togliatti, she was gifted a dream book, and she was surprised to discover that UFOs influence our lives even in dreams. A sighting of a flying saucer in the sky promises a new pleasant event, successful overcoming of difficulties, or marriage to an extraordinary personality.